I have read, I think, maybe in the AV Club or in other places, that all of the summer camp movies of that time, of the early 80s, that we were referencing and spoofing, that I actually haven't seen almost any of those. Of course there's Meatballs, but for me, personally, it was mostly actual camp that was, what was the question? The script? Yeah, sorry. Basically, Michael Shawalter and I, had worked together in State and Stella, and we were trying to write something, and we had worked on this high school movie that we were trying to do called Cleveland Rocks, and we thought, the script is very ambitious, and we may not be able to shoot it this coming fall, so this was the spring of '97, let's write something that we can just shoot right now. That's really easy, like just an outline, and get our friends and go out to the country and shoot something that's at camp where it's, all daytime exteriors and be very easy to do, and we can get all our funny friends in it, and it can be about the thing that both he and I had so much to think about, and so much to say about, which was our time, each of us separately at summer camp. As it turns out, it took 3 more years to write and raise the money, which was an insane, disastrous roller coaster ride to try to raise the small budget to do it. But so all we did was dump back and forth to each other everything we could possibly think of that had to do with camp, that we experiences we had, and just ideas like, oh, what if, and oh, I remember this one character in my camp who was like this, oh, that reminds me of that character, oh yeah, let's do that. And then just little by little, winnowing that into storylines, and then just whenever we thought we were going to make a movie and it fell apart, we would go back and rewrite the script, and just try to tighten it more and structure it a little more. It was sort of halfway through that we made it one day instead of the whole summer, and then of course it's a reference not just to our experience, but to genre but truthfully less about the summer camp genre than just romantic comedy, movie, general film storytelling. We just had a great fondness for doing the kinds of scenes that we see in movies. Exactly.
So they call it the summer camp experience. The summer camp movies were like docudramas, basically.
Yeah.
They were that realistic.
I remember watching Little Darlings and, was it Halloween? No, not Halloween, the Friday the 13th, just because they were both made at that same time period, just for visual reference more than anything. And then Meatballs is what I had seen a million times, it was in my head. And then those other ones I still have never seen, like Sleepaway Camp and I don't know what those things are.
So let's open this up to the audience. So who's got a question for Dave Wain? Right here in the front.
It's funny that it rains so much and it's so hard to shoot, because in the movie it seems like you guys had such a blast doing it, and now, 10 years later, you guys, all your careers have all changed so much, and you're doing different things. Do you still see a lot of these people you guys hang out?
Should we repeat the question?
Yeah, I think so. I can repeat it.
Okay.
The essential part of the question is, do they still...
Well, first of all, I thought it was an excellent question. You didn't hear me call you. I can't do justice. Is your name Greg?
My name's Ted.
I think he's
I'm just doing visual stuff here, but you should.
You see these people. Do you spend time with them still?
Yes, very much so. In fact, this summer we had a lot of Wet Hot American Summer related anniversary events. We we're just telling them about it, but we're in Williamsburg, where a bunch of the cast came together. We did like a comedy, variety, music, celebration show. We had people rolling. But I've continued to work with many of the cast and crew of Wet Hot American Summer over and over again. And before we made this movie as well. So it's definitely an ongoing collective of friends, which is the most fun way to do this kind of work, I would think.
When did you have an idea that this film was sort of catching on in the culture? Do you remember?
When did I realize it was a classic? That's actually is, you know, when we screened it at Sundance, that was the first real public showing of it, and it was great response. Like people were laughing hysterically, and it seemed like it was, oh, people love this movie. But then we got absolutely no offers from anyone. Not even the most fly-by-night random distributors made even a lowball offer. So it was like, oh, I guess this movie that's it. You know, move on to try something else. And then we ended up getting this very tiny, crappy offer from USA Films, and they kind of released it the way that you release a fart. And then a lot of the reviews were just like insanely hostile. Like, not just this is bad, but like this is so bad that I'm personally upset and offended. I have to like open the thesaurus, really explain how terrible, terrible, terrible this is. And then smattering in there were very nice reviews as well. So definitely not then. And the movie opened to an opening weekend of $7,000.
Wow.
I believe it, worldwide, the theatrical gross was $298,000. So not then. And then it came out on DVD, and when it first came out on DVD, it wasn't. I don't think it sold very well at all. And then it just started a very, very slow but sure build. And I guess, you know, little by little, word of mouth, and people started talking about it. And then it came out the summer of 2001. By 2003, somewhere in there, it started to like take on a certain life of its own. And by 2003, they started doing more like a new round of midnight screenings in New York. And people started dressing up, and it just started. So I guess somewhere in there, I sort of realized, oh, this movie has like people kind of, you know, carrying the torch for it that aren't us. Because the opening weekend of the early publicity time, it was me, like myself, with a bunch of postcards that said, "Here's this movie, Jeannie Garofalo's in it. You saw her in Truth About Cats and Dogs, please." Standing outside the one theater in New York and explaining, like. I know it's like 8 escalators up to the bathroom up there where they're showing, but please, you know, take a look at it in case you want to see King Kong.
So another question out here.
David Scott, I ended up going to see The Mummy too that weekend.
I just want to just real quick say, tonight so far I think 940 some people have purchased tickets just for tonight. So that means tonight has outgrossed your opening weekend. No, 10 years later, that's amazing.
Yeah. So you can run around like Donahue now.
Yeah, we got this hair. Okay, good. I don't have the hair, but...
Neither does he, believe me.
Standing right over here.
Donahue Jones.
Hi. So I read somewhere that...
Maybe too late. Sorry. Bethany?
No, it's Jess.
Nice job.
Jess?
Yes, big fan of your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
I read that the Abby and Victor saga, where he's, you know, trying to get back to her to, you know, love. That is something that's based on a story that actually happened to you. Is that true? And can you elaborate on it?
Yeah.
The answer is Jess. Yes. The true story is that that it was based on that in the year that I was a junior counselor, which I was 16, Camp Moden in Maine. At some point, I made out with this other counselor named Kara, and then that day, very soon after, I guess, I was charged with driving a bunch of kids up to Mount Katahdin in Maine, and with another counselor, an Israeli named Yoav. And the idea is, it was like a 4-hour drive. And so then the idea was we get there, and then we all sleep in this like lean-to, and then I wake up the next morning and drive the van home. And I definitely didn't want to sleep in a lean-to with a bunch of little boys in Yoav. And much more than that, importantly, I wanted to get back to camp as soon as possible so I could make out again with this girl. And so at 10 p.m., I'm like, I'm hitting the road. And Baxter State Park is pitch black, and it's the size of like Tennessee. And it's winding, narrow, unpaved, pitch black, curved park roads. And I'm 16. I had gotten my license like the day before. And somehow they're like, why don't you drive all these children? So I drove, and I'm like, well, it's a 4-hour drive, but I better make it at like 2. So I sleep this girl before she goes to sleep. And so I literally put the pedal to the metal, driving, only counting my headlights to get through the camp roads. And then within about 2 miles away from the campsite, I smashed into a tree.
Oh.
And I jammed on what I thought was the brake, but it was the accelerator. Jammed further into the tree, launching the fender deep into it. And I literally didn't know what to do at this point because, I mean, not only had I never driven a car, I'm the last person with any clue what to do in any kind of situation that a man should know what to do. And so I got out of the car and I started walking in one of the 5 directions that I thought might be back to the camp. And I literally couldn't see my hand. And I'm just getting stressed out thinking about it. Somehow I thought I was going to perish and get eaten by bears. I did finally make it back to the campsite, I guess, and then the next day they fixed the van and I drove back, and they started a new rule that junior counselors don't drive vans. And that's what happened. And then of course in the movie version of it, one of the things was that we couldn't make it at night because the whole thing takes place in one day. So it was in broad daylight on a straight road with no.
Oh my God.
And then for some reason he decided to turn. Oh shit! I'm about to turn.
We've got another question over here on your left.
Hey, dude,
You have to be demonstrative with your body in order to.
excuse me. Sorry. That was my first time seeing the movie on a big screen, and there's so many things about it you didn't catch the first time, and I really appreciate it. But dude, that was your first movie. What do you learn doing your first movie? Like, what mistakes did you learn? You're like, I'm never going to do that again when I make it.
I wasn't sure.
I first want to ask you, what did you catch this time that you didn't see before?
The little things like the kid running in the background in some shots, and some of the physical stuff in the slow motion, and like all these different details.
Did anyone catch our little reference to the Breakfast Club in the background? Yes.
Did you?
Yes. Thank you. Yes. The answer to the... Now I forget the question. Oh, what did I learn? Well, a lot. I mean, it was the first time I really did there. So a lot of it was just pure, let's try this instinct, and frankly, a lot of it was, I like how it turned out better than some things I've done since then in some ways, because there wasn't we had so much more time to write it and prepare it, and so much less time to shoot it than subsequent projects, where you, and the way it works better that way. And there was no time on set to do a lot of takes or a lot of variations or a lot of other way, alternative, lines or jokes. Just had to be like, this is what it is, and just try it, and okay, you gotta keep going, and shoot so much every day. It's a good question. To give you a serious answer, what I learned, I have to think about it. I'll tweet about it tomorrow.
Sorry, I have not so much of a wet
Sorry, I didn't mean to call you a dick.
I have a main question.
Hi.
So, for most of your work, you're known for behind-the-scenes work. I'm curious, why for Stella did you decide that you wanted to actually act out and start doing stuff in front of the camera instead of just stay behind the camera?
None of the things that I've done like that have ever been so premeditated in that way. Stella, for example, was all the things that I've done that I've enjoyed the most have very much just evolved organically, and Stella certainly is that. Michael Showalter and Michael Black and I were just doing alt comedy around New York, and then we started doing our own show at a nightclub, and then that evolved into us doing these little shorts, and that evolved into doing the TV series and other things, and then touring, and so it was never like, and now I'm going to step in front of the camera. It was just sort of what we always had done, and I've always done both. I've always been in front and behind, and I've always enjoyed both. And I just gravitated more in general to behind the camera because I have very limited toolboxes.
Sorry, as a side note, I just want to say I am a big fan of Stella.
Woo! Woo!
You know, it's hard work.
I'm part of the minority.
Minority? Only the minority are a fan of Stella?
Oh! Hi-yo!
Thank you.
Hi. Hello. Frank.
I see you.
Hi, my name's Caitlin.
Caitlin, I'm very happily married.
I've always wondered, out of everyone in the cast, how did you get Christopher Morley?
Yeah!
Honestly, I wish I had a better story, but he came in audition. I had never actually heard of him. Showalter had heard of him, but he just came in audition and he was like, everyone was doing like funny takes on this Gene character, and he came in and we were like, oh, Jesus Christ. Whatever he's doing, get him and sign him up. So, not much more of a story. And what was sort of funny is that when he got to the shoot, we were like, oh my God, what you did in that audition was like perfect. We don't have any other notes, like just do that. He's like, what was I doing? We're like, well, it was just like really weird in ways that I can't describe. And he's like, huh. I'll try something. Then, at the end, in post-production, sometimes you replace the dialogue just for audio purposes. And so we were in the booth, months later, and he's redoing some of the lines, and he did them completely differently. And so, like, some of the lines in the speech you hear in the dining room are like absolutely not what he was doing on stage. Oh, is there a question out there?